No. I might be able to get behind that. You persuade me to vote no, and I might Please. No, you don't have to say please. Why don't you do like
Mr. Westerson, are we just about ready to go?
why don't you do like I did to you? Would you consider it? And I just said no. See, at least I'm honest. I'm not gonna plead with you, I'm just gonna say no. No. I don't even remember what that was on. I was on the workload thing. You wanted me to do something and I just said no.
You can ask for this consent agenda is approved.
So just no.
I'm pulling everything out of the consent agenda.
The minutes?
Well, no.
The consent agenda.
I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Or just, are you pulling the status of initiatives and one is an agenda item?
So number 9, 10, 11, 14, 15, 16. One clarification.
9, 10, what?
In the consent agenda or under the recommendations by, under presentation 1?
No, there's no 9, 10, or 11. I don't know what he's talking about.
That's for the BCC review.
Oh, okay, so that's not consent agenda.
That's not,
Okay.
I'm
All right.
I was so confused.
Are we ready, Mr. Frostad? You're good there? As soon as Mr. Westerson sits down, we'll call us to order and get going. You're good?
Yep.
All right, I'm going to call us to order and get going on the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting of July 25th. We will begin with a roll call, Mr. Westerson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We'll start with members of the committee. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Here.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
Present.
Councillor Dodick.
Here.
Councillor Croson.
Present.
I see we have almost all of council here with us as well. Several of your colleagues here and online. Thank you.
We all have to be.
Perfect. Thank you very much. We will go with the acknowledgement statement. I did not pull that out. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future, while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made Lethbridge their home. Perfect. Starting now with the adoption of the agenda, I have a motion by Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting of July 25th, 2024 be adopted as presented. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Mr. City Clerk, are there any modifications or alterations to this document?
There are none.
Thank you. Then I'll call a question, Madam Chair.
Question's been called. All in favor? That passes unanimously. Excellent. Moving to the consent agenda, I have a motion by Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on June 27, 2024 be approved and the Chair and City Clerk Designate be authorized to sign the same. And further be it resolved that the status of initiatives for July 25, 2024 be received as information. Councillor Dodick.
Call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. That passes unanimously as well. Now, based on scheduling, we are hoping to do item 7.2 next, which is the closed item on our confidential agenda. 7.2. Did I? Oh, 7.1. Sorry. I'm sorry. I read that wrong when I looked closely. And so the plan is to enter into a closed session at this time. I have a motion by Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that we do now enter a closed meeting at 12:34 p.m. to discuss confidential matters with respect to items 7.1 and 7.2 as per sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Okay, question.
Question's been called. All in favor? Excellent. We're going to move into closed. Again, about 1:30, I'm hoping to be back in open for any members of the public who wish to join that? Am I the only one that comes to any day on the 25th and immediately knows how many months to Christmas? Like, it's just 5 months to Christmas now, guys. So even though, we're hitting 30s most of next week, 5 months to Christmas, we could be minus 30. We will call ourselves back to order and continue on. With the consent of the committee, I'm going to move to 6.1, just to give anybody time who wants to be there for 5.1 time to be in the room. 6.1 is a submission. At this time, the motion is simply for information, and it is a succession planning for council. Now, I do have one person from the community who has requested to speak on that, and that is Jim Culver. Is he in the room? Okay, so maybe we do have to wait on that one anyways. So my attempt to go faster is not going to work. So we will move then to 5.1, which is the review of boards, commissions, and committees. We have 17 recommendations, but we also have a fulsome presentation on it by Mr. Sarsfield. So Mr. Sarsfield, if you would like to start your presentation on 5.1. You can sit wherever is convenient and comfortable. All right. Welcome, Mr. Sarsfield. The floor is yours to begin your presentation.
So thank you. The City Clerk's office was tasked with going through all the BCCs. This was done almost a year ago. And so we've gone through numerous processes. So I'm just going to outline how we ended up where we are at today. What we first did is we sent out a questionnaire to all members that were on committees from past and asked them for input on what they thought. Then we met with all the various committees to see what their views were, and we asked them specific questions on where they stood and how they felt about their current actions, their terms of reference, and relationship to council. Then finally we met, well, not finally, but we also met with all the admin support staff for all the various committees. We met with each councillor except for one because he happened to be away. And we also met with the ELT team to get their views. So this represents all of those together. The recommendations, and there are numerous of them, are not unanimous, but generally, I would say for the majority, they would be close. So I thought I'd first start off with what we looked at. And so what we have is we have two layers here. The first layer is those which are required by legislation. If we choose to do them, that includes the ARB, SDAB, Combative Sports, Police Commission, Lethbridge Board, and the intermunicipal county. In addition, the city has formed a number of council committees which are not required, but were viewed to be important and priorities of council of the day, and they're listed down below. So as I mentioned before, the top layer are those which are required by legislation. So for instance, if we wish to have events for combative sports, we require legislation to do so, and so that's why that one is in that category. All the rest are required. Well, I guess alternatively, although I will never suggest this, the council of the day could decide we don't need a library, and so they get rid of the bylaw. I'm not saying in any stretch of the imagination that that's what's proposed, but that's how we interpret it. Though these are mandatory and these are the ones required. The other ones are listed at the bottom. They're advisory in capacity. They currently have no delegated authority. So if we looked at either their bylaws or their terms of reference, which we did, there's no delegated authority. They provide recommendations to council, and council, based on those recommendations, may choose to go forward or not. So based on all those conversations we had and meetings and so forth, these are our recommendations. And I should tell you that any recommendation that we make, it's not as if you could just adopt recommendations 1 to 5. I don't know which ones those are, but let's say you did. We would be coming back. There'd be further steps required for each one. So even if you passed recommendation 1 to 5, we would be coming back to this committee outlining the steps required to do recommendation 1, recommendation 2, and so forth. So just pointing that out. We didn't want to get in too much detail, but I definitely can answer those kinds of questions if you so wish. So what we're recommending is those that are required by legislation continue as a committee of council. Those which are not required by legislation, we suggest that they either transition to an administrative committee or alternatively look to see what their purpose is. We have others suggested. So for instance, we pick on the youth committee, and I'm just picking on that one because it's different. We have had struggles with that particular committee in terms of reaching quorum and making sure that we're meeting the mandate and the direction that the youth want. So we're proposing alternatives to that, and that is create some sort of portal for the youth to provide feedback to council on different actions, and alternatively, as groups, can report to SBC at any time. The Galt Museum is grayed out, and that's not because they're necessarily colorblind. Why it's done that is because we've appointed a new CAO there, and we want to give that person time to get some direction on what she and her particular board would recommend would be the best solution. So right now, the direction in the current bylaw is not that clear. So the language needs to be cleared up in one way or the other. So we've given sort of a moratorium of a year to come back with a decision on what they would wish to do and let council act upon it if they so wish. The other ones we're suggesting form some sort of admin committee other than the joint school board committee. That one, we're just saying at this particular stage that they should report to one of the standing policy committees. The reason why we're suggesting that specifically is because their meetings are only held 3 times a year, and the timing of requests from those particular school boards is not necessarily their timing is not necessarily conducive to having action at a good time. So, and we've had several cases like that. We're asked to identify gaps, and one of the gaps we identified is we think there should be a new board created called the Community Requirements Appeal Board. I know that's a title that everyone enjoys, and really what it is so that council doesn't have to deal with decisions on chickens or unsightly properties, or orders to remedy contraventions. So that's what we're suggesting, that particular appeal board be created. In similar municipalities throughout Alberta, a similar board is created. We also think it's important, based on all that we've heard from the various parties, that there should be some ongoing regular mutual partnership meetings with different groups, and we have made an effort in the past, I know council has, to meet with these on a regular basis, but we thought we should just highlight these. For instance, we have a memorandum of understanding with the Kainai Nation Blood, as well as we have met formally or informally with Coaldale, members of parliament, and MLAs. We also think it's as part of advocacy that's important for council to start serving or looking to get representation on some other boards, whether it be the provincial Alberta municipalities, whether it be the Federation Canadian municipalities, and there is one which is currently vacant, which they're looking for a city appointee for, and that's the Community Futures Lethbridge Region Board. And I think I'm done. Am I? Okay. So that's a new structure. I would be pleased to answer all kinds of questions or answers. As I mentioned, I've done a high-level overview of it, and I welcome council's response to what we've prepared. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Sarsfield. Now, as this is a standing policy committee, we now turn to the members of the public that people can speak on this issue. You have up to 5 minutes. If you have any questions, please address them to the committee, not to staff, etc., and then members of the committee could ask those questions later on your behalf. We do have one person who has signed up already to speak, so we will begin with that person, and that is Alison Purcell from the Lethbridge School Board. Alison, I know you are online. I'm hoping all the technology is working fine for you. Perfect, so we will turn it over to you.
Sounds good, thank you. I did have some difficulty with tech here, but I think you can hear me probably. So I am Alison Purcell, the Board Chair of Lethbridge School Division. I've also spoken with Board Chair of Holy Spirit School Division, Dr. Carmen Mombalquet. Today, our request is for recommendation number 5 to disband the joint committee of the City of Lethbridge and the Lethbridge School Boards to be tabled to a future SPC meeting. As school boards are on summer break, it is unfortunate that a conversation regarding this recommendation could not be had with all parties involved prior to the recommendation being brought forward to SPC today. The discussion at the previous joint committee meeting involved the importance of the time spent meeting on a regular and timely basis. The school boards are requesting this recommendation be tabled so that they are better able to provide a thoughtful presentation to SPC in regards to this recommendation, and further conversation can occur. The importance of the relationship between the school boards and the City Council is vital to the work we do for citizens of Lethbridge. We not only service the youth of our city, but Lethbridge School Division alone is the 4th largest employer in the City of Lethbridge. Those reasons alone are great rationale for us to be at the table to discuss whether the joint committee should be disbanded or to emphasize the value it brings to the work we all do. Further to requesting the tabling of recommendation number 5, I would also like to briefly address recommendation number 16 regarding the elected officials meeting. Although this recommendation lists a number of key stakeholders, we would like to have further time to explore the acknowledgement that school board trustees are also elected officials and are on the same ballot as city councillors on election day. The importance of all elected officials being engaged in the work we all do together is vital to relationship building and doing the best for all of our citizens. Please take into consideration school board trustees when reviewing recommendation number 16, and we would love an opportunity to discuss and explore this recommendation further. Thank you for your time and consideration of our request to table recommendation number 5, as well as adding school board trustees to elected officials meetings in recommendation number 16. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Purcell. Ms. Purcell was the only one who signed up to speak, so we'll now open it to any members who are here in the room. If you do come forward, you do need to provide your name so that the City Clerk's Department can record the name, and you would have up to 5 minutes to speak. So is there any member of the public who wishes to speak on this? Okay, please come up, and again, provide your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Good afternoon. Pleasure to be here. My name is Amanda Jensen. I'm the Executive Director of Volunteer Lethbridge. Thank you for the time this afternoon. I think the overall overarching question that I would want to pose first is, what is engagement? What is public engagement? I think the second point that I'd like to make is I believe this is a bit of an omnibus, and I'm not sure that it needs to be, which would be a concern that I would like to put on the table today. So Volunteer Lethbridge is the nonprofit leadership center in Lethbridge. We are and expect to be the voice of especially the nonprofit community, in the same way that a Chamber of Commerce is a voice for small business in our community. Just to give a perspective of what Volunteer Lethbridge is, what a nonprofit leadership center is, because I know that this is a new concept to some people who might be listening this morning. And that's our skin in the game here, is talking about what it means to be generally engaged and not representing one particular issue or one particular organization that might be particularly affected by what is under consideration here. So Volunteer Lethbridge, for the record, does oppose the recommendation today to dissolve committees currently under review before this Standing Policy Committee. Outcome 6 of the Community Wellbeing and Safety Strategy, which was just renewed and approved by City Council, states that Lethbridge residents are empowered and engaged. The updated April 2024 strategy states Lethbridge residents will be key drivers and beneficiaries of CWSS implementation. Services, policies, and processes should be grounded in what individuals and households need. It is critical for residents to feel empowered and engaged to communicate what is needed, where it's needed, and when. The updated strategy takes it further by saying that without an empowered and engaged community, city efforts to implement the CWSS will be of limited success. How can we ensure that all Lethbridge residents play a role in enhancing community well-being and safety without these committees' crucial involvement in municipal affairs? From the original motion that I believe is driving this conversation today in 2023, there was a direction for the creation of necessary committees to guide the goals of City Council where needed. Today's recommendations dissolve many community-engaged committees without creating direction of how citizens will continue to be engaged, without providing specific direction of how City of Lethbridge residents will be engaged, and how that engagement, how much power and direction will actually be given to paid administrators through the City of Lethbridge without engagement with City of Lethbridge. While the city has the authority to remove or dissolve boards, committees, or commissions, I believe that a consideration for if current strategies are not working, is this the only way forward? Are there other ways that we could engage City of Lethbridge residents in these conversations? And I would suggest to you that using an organization like a nonprofit leadership center, whose #1 mandate through the federal government is to convene conversations that matter, especially through the nonprofit community within our city, could be a valuable resource. The specific example that was used earlier was the lack of engagement by the youth committee. I have seen that over my many years of work in this community and as a former municipal employee, and I don't disagree with it. But I also wonder if there's other ways to create engagement besides dissolving a committee and referring to internal administration. So in conclusion, by including public in issues, you're engaging them and disseminating the information through community members without the bias derived from any incentive of pay, re-election, any of the other factors that come with being involved with municipality with a capital M. The thoughts, opinions, and decisions being made through these committees are being made by people that live and work outside of City Hall. My suggestion is, before that any of this officially proceeds, I ask for more engagement. Accompanied with that would be an increased understanding of the rationale. I understand that I have become aware of this just recently, and certainly that's on me. It's probably been on the table for a lot longer than I've been aware of it, and that is on me. But I'm not sure that I'm the only one that feels that way. I also offer the services of your nonprofit leadership center to help with engagement. Example, the Youth Advisory Board, and I respectfully make these comments today, and thank you for your time.
Thank you. I think you practiced that for 5 minutes because you were pretty much right on the 5 minutes. Yeah. Good time management. All right. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to speak? Oh, we'll take the gentleman in blue first. Thank you. Come on up. Again, if you can make sure we get your name for the record.
My name is Jim Culver, an 87-year resident of this Lethbridge. I didn't bring any notes, and I'm just going to try to ad-lib what I have to say. And it's as a result of some of Al Beaver's articles in the paper about succession, about pensions.
Sorry, we're on 5.1 right now, which is on the boards, commissions, and committees.
Pardon me, ma'am?
We're on 5.1. We're discussing the boards, commissions, and committees and the recommendations.
Can I still speak to this issue?
You can speak to this, but not to the succession planning right now. Yours will be later in the agenda.
I'm disappointed that half your team members are not here.
Oh, no, actually.
You're going to have to double shift out there, folks.
This is the committee. We have the entire committee here.
This is a committee?
This is a committee.
Okay.
Yes.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. All right, perfect. We'll see you later. All right. All right, we'll have the next person up again. Please provide your name for the record.
I always have to adjust this when I get here. My name is Lorian Johansson. Good afternoon, members of this governance SPC. I'm here today as the current chair of the Heart of Our City Committee and its longest serving member in response to the recommendations brought forth today by Mr. Sarsfield, Deputy City Clerk, as a result of his review of the BCCs, specifically recommendation number 3 that pertains to the committee I represent. The members of the HOCC believe strongly in the mandate that this committee was imbued with at conception to represent downtown Lethbridge and provide strategic leadership for its revitalization efforts as directed by Council. Many goals have been accomplished, but there is a lot more work to do. A 50-year master plan cannot be considered finished after 17 years. And although it's true that the master plan hasn't been updated since its creation, a rewrite was scoped in 2019 and a $250,000 budget allocated. But the evaluation that followed showed that a full rewrite was unnecessary. Instead, in an effort to remain financially responsible, bound to our purpose, and efficient, the HOCC engaged a consulting firm and undertook a complete governance review. On February 25th, 2021, this SPC heard the results of that review and the accompanying implementation plan that reaffirmed our mandate, clarified roles and responsibilities, and enhanced our terms of reference. The recommended amendments were approved by both this body and City Council, and the work began. Shortly after this, the HOCC received the news that our dedicated urban revitalization manager, Mr. Andrew Malcolm, was transferring to a department that so dearly needed him. And although we were sad to see him leave, the important work he has done since then has shown it to be the best course of action. That left us without a URD manager for several months. And when Mrs. Crystal Scheidt was selected to fill the vacancy, it was a relief to have URD representation at the table once again. Although it should be noted that her first year in the role was the learning curve equivalent of climbing Mount Everest. She has become an incredibly effective and valuable member of our team as she and her department implement our work plan recommendations coming from the HOCC. Earlier this year, the committee created 5 subcommittees to focus our energy, prepare detailed reports, and bring forward strong, actionable items to the committee for recommendation. Our members are eager to continue these next steps in our growth and development. The recommendation from Mr. Sarsfield came with a note. A master plan should never be actioned by a non-administrative committee. So I would ask the question, what does this transition mean for this committee and what should we prepare for? Is it a reclassification or an end? The HOCC stands ready to amend our strategic direction, implementation plans, and even our master plan, should this SPC and City Council see fit to do so. I believe that our work is not finished, and our place as an advisory committee to Council should remain available to the members of the public who wish to serve. The question that is on your minds, and ours as well through this process, is, what is our value as a committee? When I asked the members of the HOCC this question, the answer was simple. 1, we are a conduit for direct, approachable, public, community engagement, something which I know has been at the forefront of many recent conversations. And 2, we are a diversity of input, insight, opinion, and wisdom, not just from our stakeholders, but from the incredibly passionate, knowledgeable, and unique individuals who all have a seat at our table. These people have poured their heart and soul into this work, some, like me, for the better part of 7 years, and some who are new to the committee and even to the country. I would like to take this moment to publicly thank each and every one of them for giving so much of their time and love to this committee. We appreciate the essential role of city administration in helping to create positive change in our community, but passion, the heart, is what drives a community towards change. Passion is energy. Feel the power that comes from focusing on what excites you. Passion will move people beyond themselves, beyond their shortcomings, and beyond their failures, and into the future. Thank you. It's been my honor to serve.
Thank you, Ms. Johansson. Is there anyone else in the audience who would wish to speak on 5.1? All right, please come on up. And again, if you could provide your name. Oh, yes. Please come on up and again, provide your name and 5 minutes, please.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Shelby Gibson, and I am on the Animal Welfare Committee. So in regards to the recommendations that were presented here, the Animal Welfare Committee is asking to table the recommendations given for the Animal Welfare Committee and give the Animal Welfare Committee a chance to respond to these recommended changes. The reason for that is because our interpretation of these recommendations is that our committee would more or less be dissolved, and that our responsibilities and our current upkeep of the things that we do would land onto a singular person, which would be Dave Henley of Bylaw. This is not conducive to maintaining the progress that the committee has made and for our future plans as well. So our current responsibilities include, but are not limited to, food distribution by members of the committee for the feral cat colonies that is held by committee members. So the food for the feral cat colonies that is distributed is held at a facility owned by one of the members and is also distributed and coordinated with Dave Henley for that as well. Funding allocations for non-vet grant funding and feral cat colony funding, so funding to maintain the mandate that we have set out to do originally. And new and improved responsibilities include creating better checks and balances for applications and funding allocations, better monitoring of the current feral cat colonies, and we've also recently adjusted our terms of reference to broaden our mandate. So the reason why we'd asked to table these recommendations so that the AWC can respond is because we feel like our committee is exceptionally important and there needs to be a catalyst and advocate for animal welfare in the city. And given our broadened mandate recently, we've updated our terms of reference. We would like the opportunity to explore the opportunity to make that happen and to see where we can take our committee moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gibson. Is there anyone else in the audience who would wish to speak? Again, please come up, state your name, and you have 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone.
Just a second. If we could raise his podium. You're okay there?
Yeah, I'm
okay.
fine now. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew Langell. I'm currently the chair of the Youth Advisory Council. I've been on the committee since about January 2023. So I understand, especially as Mr. Sarsfield pointed out, we are very easy to pick on. Often there have been instances where we do not meet quorum. And we also, I would say, arguably don't have a very good sense of direction. I would request that we postpone this so I can better communicate with the Youth Advisory Council, because I don't believe that most of them are aware we are about to be changed into a simple portal. That's not something that was really exactly made clear to us. Not that Stephanie did a great job communicating with us, but the actual results of the city clerk investigation, that was not exactly what we had envisioned. So youth participation in democracy is not a issue that is getting any better. You're welcome to do independent research. Youth faith in democracy, and especially engagement in local democracy, is probably at its worst point ever. By dissolving this committee and having it simply be a website link, I believe that would be sending a message to the youth of Lethbridge that engagement directly with the city is not always something that would be worth the effort or time. Specifically, I would like to hit on a few things. We are an advisory committee. We ideally want to advise council on what the youth believe and what we think about certain issues. However, we have had little communication with council on what you want to hear from the youth, what you need to know, what initiatives you think youth either are not participating in or you don't know why they're not participating in it. We've had very little communication on this issue. And going forward, youth are not going to be the most organized people. We're not always going to make quorum. However, if we did have more direction, we're more willing to certainly. It's a lot easier to complete a task when it's being given to you rather than you trying to find one and create one. For example, we did decide to initiate a youth survey. We worked alongside city administration. I believe we created something quite interesting. However, we have been isolated from the Lethbridge school districts. Stephanie has sent emails on our behalf, and we have not been granted any access to speak at schools, hand out flyers at schools, or speak directly to students at schools, which is where youth outreach is at its strongest. That issue alone makes our mandate quite difficult. And then, so I would like, if the committee so decides, to table this issue for another meeting. I would like to discuss with the other members of my Youth Advisory Council, and I believe we could send a more coherent, this is kind of just ad-libbing right now, a more coherent message of what we believe we need to better serve both council and the youth of Lethbridge. And I would like to thank you for your time, and that is everything.
Thank you, Mr. Langle. Anyone else who would like to speak? All right, please come on up and again state your name, and you only have 300 seconds. Sorry, I was getting tired of saying 5 minutes, so you have 5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My name is Blaine Badut. It's my pleasure to speak in front of this esteemed SPC today. And I would ask if one of the esteemed members of this SPC would be willing to ask some questions of administration about this review. One, what was the consultation with BCCs explicitly and in full detail? Two, were the BCCs that are impacted by the recommendations made today informed of or consulted with prior to this SPC? And if not, why not? And if not, which based on the speakers before me has been made quite clear, I would ask that these recommendations be delayed and deferred until these BCCs can be consulted with in a full and comprehensive manner so that we can continue to do the hard work the citizens of this great city we do every day. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is there anyone else who would wish to speak? Perfect. So that means I think I have everybody. We move now to questions from committee. And first one in my queue is Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll start off with a couple of questions for Mr. Sarsfield, if we could. Recommendation number 11 indicates a reduction in some of the size of the boards and the committees and commissions and so forth. So, Mr. Sarsfield, can you take us down that pathway a little bit and perhaps provide us with some illumination in regards to what are we trying to accomplish with this? Do we have an idea which some of the boards, committees, or commissions are that we would like to reduce in size? Do they agree with that reduction? Can you maybe just walk us down the pathway a bit?
So one of the things that the city clerk's office did as part of this review, we reached out to other municipalities and also looked at what their best practices are in terms of boards, commissions, committees. Specifically in Lethbridge, we have some boards. We have one with 15. I believe we have another with 18. And there's another which is proposed, which will be similar in number to that. And some of those boards have difficulty reaching quorum, and even if they do have quorum, have difficulty reaching decision because there's so many players involved. So our recommendation, also looking at Robert's rules, is committees consist of no more than 9 members. So that is why we suggested that one of the general recommendations is to come up with 9. There may be exceptions to that, but that's where we came up with that particular number.
Okay, thank you. Second question, Madam Chair. I note that the appointments to boards will be for a maximum of 2 terms of 3 years. Is that correct, by a member of the public?
So it depends. And I know that's not a really good answer, but that's the answer I'm going to give you. So right now I'm
accustomed to that, David.
In one of our bylaws, we stipulate, as well as in the procedure bylaw, we stipulate the length of term for different boards, committees, and commissions. There's some which are legislated, which require different terms, but those which are not legislated, typically those which were on the lower rung, council has said that they be appointed for a maximum of up to 6 years. Some of them are appointed annually, some are appointed 2 years, some are appointed 3 years, and there is a provision provided that there's more than 2/3 in favor of council, you can extend it up to 10 years. In talking, one of the questions that we asked most of the committees, we asked them what did they think of the terms and whether they wanted to extend it to up to 10 years. And there was not a general agreement on that. Some like the 6 years, some like the 10, some like the 1. So unless there is a change, it would require a change in the 2 bylaws which are impacted, and so that's where we stand.
Lastly, in this round, Madam Chair, is when is the update on term limits and stipends due in 2024?
So there was a second resolution which you had sponsored regards to that. In terms of the stipends, we thought it was more appropriate to deal with that in the Code of Conduct of Council, which I believe is next on your agenda.
Yeah.
So that's where that is addressed. We did talk about limits on terms. Some are stipulated by other legislation, and ultimately it's up to council if they wish to place limits on that. So I don't know if that's the answer you're looking for, but that's the answer we gave you.
Well, I'm never looking for just one answer, David. Thank you.
Perfect. Mr. Sarsfield, you're a parliamentarian, correct? You're looking at this in a very practical way to make governance work as best as possible from a parliamentarian's point of view.
Yes, that is true. But we also wanted to make sure that we had consulted with everyone. So we did engage, as I said, through a questionnaire. Then we met with each particular board, committee, and council, see what their views are. Then taking those recommendations, we then met with the ELT as well as the administration support team, and just to come up with our overall recommendations. Okay. So it's not necessarily what is stipulated in Robert's rules, but it's also to look at what works best for the committee. So, and for the city of Lethbridge.
Thank you. With the sort of indulgence of my colleagues, I want to just we have the motion that was brought forward of the 17 recommendations, but I also want to give us a few other options based on partly on what we've heard, but also in conversation with the City Clerk's Department. This can always be tabled to our next governance meeting in October, which would give us some time to work with any of the groups. The other opportunity is in the end of October, Council has an organizational meeting. It could be referred to that meeting, which would be a conversation with all of Council. That is one option. We have a slate of 17. We can, after all the questions, we could go through and divide some things out. The only thing at that point is the City Clerk's Department has already requested if we do that, they would request some time to work on any different motion. So that might take some time there as well. We could recommend the full 17 as is. We could recommend against the full 17 as is. So just giving you some options as you're asking questions so that you kind of know you don't have to necessarily make a decision today. So it was just a process. I will move now to the next person in the queue, which is Councillor Schmidt-Rimpel.
Thank you very much, Chair Crowson. Mr. Sarsfield, I think there might be some confusion with regards to what an administrative committee actually means. So I'm hearing some of the groups say that they feel a transition to an administrative committee means that their committee is being disbanded. Can you outline the difference between a committee of council and a committee of administration, please?
Yeah, thank you. I was hoping someone would ask me that. We did not mention disbanded except for, I think, in one specific case. So what we said is we don't believe these committees are any longer really serving as committees of council. Prime reason for that is, first of all, they don't seem to report to council. Very few of them have reported to council in the last 5 years, other than on terms of reference and or bylaws. There has been no communication on that. Secondly, we've established a new process for committees, the standing policy committees, so we thought that might be an appropriate venue. Depending on the committee, whichever committee you pick on, committee A, B, C, what we would be doing is if there was direction given from council to look at that particular committee, we would be coming back with steps. So when we said that it could particularly be transitioned to admin committee, what could happen is, for instance, that particular department will still be consulting with whichever members which may or may not be on the committee now, depending on what the issue is and so forth. It just means that structurally they would not be reporting directly to council. They'd be working with administration on a more timely and efficient manner on whatever issues came about. And that way decisions can be made more efficiently. So I would say that probably most of the people here or on the boards will definitely still have a role in some capacity. So the fact we said transition to admin committee just means they're not reporting directly to council.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that they're being removed or their committee will still stand in the fall. They're just reporting, not just, but they're reporting to administration as opposed to reporting to council.
Right. So for instance, we've had some committees which are on there which we've had difficulty recruiting. That we don't want to stop that committee from functioning and still carrying out their job, so we would work with whoever happens to be on it currently instead of waiting to do whatever, because there's a few which have remained unfilled for over 2 years now, some of the vacancies.
Okay, so these are not committees made up of administration members only. These are members made up of the community who would report to administration.
Correct, that's the idea. And how it may turn out to be, it may not exactly be the same committee, depending on what the needs are and what the programs that are being working on, but it would be the same result.
Okay, I'll step out for now.
I see that next in queue technically is Councillor Middleton Hope, but Councillor Dodick hasn't had a chance to ask any questions, so I'm going to skip the queue and go to Councillor Dodick.
Okay, my question is to Mr. Sarsfield. We have had a request from one speaker to table all of the recommendations. There's been a request from some of the speakers specifically to table, or at least have further discussions with respect to 2, 3, 5, 8, and 16. And in looking at the engagement that took place, which you had already referred to, was there was a survey and met with each of the BCCs. And although I appreciate that this is a public agenda and people can go online and see what the recommendations are, would there be any harm in actually delaying all of the recommendations till the next SPC so that all of the BCCs might be notified by being given directly a copy of the recommendations so that they can respond whether they choose to do so in writing or verbally or both at the next SPC. In other words, there's no rush to deal with this, particularly bearing in mind that this would be referred to council, and council isn't meeting till the fall in any event.
No, it's really, we were given a year to provide some information.
Yeah.
So we provided information, and we didn't really anticipate that there would be unanimous consent or dissent on it. So if you wish to gather more information, if you wish us to consult with other groups, if you wish us to go back to the committees, that would be fine.
No, I'm not so sure that you need to go back to the committees. What I'm suggesting is that the recommendations be forwarded to the committees, given the next date, and then they can come, if they choose to make a pitch either in support or against it. So I'm not asking for administration to do any more work. I'm putting the onus on the BCCs to respond to the recommendations. And the only ask I have is that the recommendations, or what I'm suggesting is that the recommendations be sent to the BCCs. So that's the only work I would be suggesting of the administration.
Okay.
Would that be a problem?
Not a problem at all.
Thank you.
That's your only question, Councillor Dodick?
It is.
All right, you can shut your mic off then if you want.
I don't want to.
Councillor Middleton Hope.
There we go. Thank you for the illumination, Councillor Dodick. I come at it from a slightly different perspective. As Mr. Sarsfield has indicated, they've had a year. There have been lots of consultation.
We're still in questions. Is this
Yes,
a
I
question?
realize that. I'll get to it. The one comment would be in regards to the school board, suggesting that this wouldn't be an opportune time. Would you agree with that, that it's perhaps not an opportune time for the school board to participate perhaps more energetically in this process because of the break for the summer?
There's always better times for different people. So
I thought so.
So
question then is in regards to engagement. The process for any of the groups that are mentioned in this document would indicate, would all have the opportunity to come through an SPC and provide presentations and or dialogue that ultimately would go to council. Is that correct?
Yeah, generally, most of the terms of reference and or bylaws say that they provide updates to council on their progress. So that's already provided in their terms of reference.
So there already is a conduit?
Correct.
Okay, that's it.
All right. I'm trying to pick up on what people are laying down here. I'm getting the sense that if there was a motion made to refer this to ourselves at the October 24th governance with an invite to all the groups and the information, or not an invite, but with the information to go to all of the groups that are, in concerned here, that would be the sort of the direction I'm hearing that the committee wishes to go. Just if I'm, okay. Reluctantly. All right. I know. But if that requires a motion to be drafted, so I'm going to give Mr. Westerson a little bit of time, but first, Councillor Dodick, go right ahead if you have something to add to that. Just a second here, but
I just want to say, I don't believe it's kicking it down the road, because there was a discussion among administration with respect to the recommendation. The discussion with the BCCs were not with respect to the recommendation. So the administration, if you look at page of the presentation where it talks about engagement, which would be page 4 of 23. So the
Are you talking about
the
document itself or the presentation?
the document, because it talks about the online survey and the meeting with the BCCs, but the recommendations were discussed with the administrative support and the city council members, but not with the BCCs. That's why I'm saying that it was discussed between administration and thought these were good recommendations. And I think they are good recommendations, but I think there's a little bit of a gap in terms of. Okay.
So the comment was made by Councillor Dodick that the recommendations were discussed with administration. That's not quite correct. What we did is we provided all the information we'd gathered to that point to administration and asked for their input at that time. So it was a collective response. We started off with the basis and we just kept on adding to it. The recommendations from all those different groups, including administration, those were definitely passed on to council and ELT. So administration didn't actually see the recommendations.
Okay, because it
So
says the.
if I said that, then that's my mistake.
Okay.
Okay.
But so then to follow up on that, the recommendations that are presented today, were they discussed with the BCCs or was this when
the agenda went public, they became aware of it.
So that's okay. So that's when they got it. Gotcha. Thank you.
All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much. So just to move away from what we're working on over here with regards to referral motion, Mr. Sarsfield, we talk in the report about changing the support to the BCCs. We're looking at increasing some training, increasing clerk support to those groups. What does that do to our staffing? So do we have adequate staffing to support the BCC's changes that are being proposed in the report as well as in the motion? And will there be a budget request coming forward for that or some financial requests coming forward for that?
The current answer would be no. But it depends on what recommendations you adopt.
Okay.
So for instance, if you say, we're going to keep all the committees in their current structure and we're going to create more, then there would definitely be a budget request. But if there is some which go away or take a different form, transition to an admin committee, then what we will do is provide elevated service to those which aren't currently getting service.
Okay.
So so for us to say, this is what the financial cost, we couldn't estimate until we know what the status of the committees is.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay. We have a draft motion that's just about to come forward, but one thing, and I don't think it's actually in the motion, Mr. Sarsfield, if we were sending out these recommendations to the BCC so that they know what might be discussed in October, I think there's also a lack of knowledge of what admin committees are, because most of our volunteers work on council committees. So could information also go out to the BCCs on what admin committees are, so that, again, just to try to give some awareness before any decisions are eventually made?
Yeah. So, of course, we could do that.
I thought that would be the simple answer, but just wanted to make sure. Okay. We have to add some legalese to the motion. As soon as we get it, I'll be reading it out, so just a moment, please. As Mr. Westerson's working, we should all sing Under Pressure. No. All right. All right. I have a motion moved by Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee postpone this matter to the October 24, 2024 meeting of the Governance Standing Policy Committee to allow each board, commission, and committee named in the recommendations to review the report and be invited, if they choose to participate at the October 24, 2024 meeting of the Governance Standing Policy Committee. Now, there is one time when we call ourselves the Governance Stranding Policy Committee. So, small thing, just at some point we might do that. But Councillor Dodick, that's your motion, and you can strand us or not. You can strand us or not, because this is your motion.
I can strand it?
Yeah, it says Governance Stranding Policy Committee.
It says stranding?
I think they changed that already quickly.
No, darn, I like the stranding. Anyways, I feel stranded. I want to thank Mr. Sarsfield and his team for the work that they did, and the reality is that in large measure, I do agree with the recommendations for the reason given. However, the fact is that we've had some requests from some of the committees that are affected by these recommendations. For example, the school board, Heart of the City, Youth Advisory, and the Animal Committee, as well as a general request for everything to be postponed. Initially, I would have thought, well, the requests that were made were reasonable, but rather than just deal with the ones where the request was made, and it would be best, in my view, not to put any more work on the administration in terms of doing any work on this, but rather to postpone to the next Stranding Committee meeting to allow anyone, if they choose to participate, in terms of responding, whether in writing or by presentation or any combination thereof. So at least at that time, we can close the loop and say that, in fact, every committee had a chance to look at the recommendation and have their input in it. Thus, the reason for this resolution.
Okay, question has been called. All in favor? And we will deal with that in October after the holidays so that school boards can have a better look at it, as can all the other BCCs. Excellent. So that moves us on now to the next thing, which is Travis Hillier, General Manager, Customer Service and Corporate Performance, on Bylaw 6454, Amendments to Council Code of Conduct, Bylaw 6125. Just as we did with 5.1, we will start with a presentation, this time by Mr. Hillier, and then we will open it up to the public if you have any concerns or questions or comments. Right. Thank you all for attending today, and Mr. Hillier, you have your presentation now, please. Thank you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, Madam Chair and members of the Governance SPC. As has already been stated, I'm here today to talk about the proposed amendments to the Council Code of Conduct bylaw. Next slide. So why are we here today? Again, this is to review your Code of Conduct. It is important to note that this sets out the rules and guidelines that outline expected behavior, values, and principle for yourself as council, as well as future councils. Next slide. So just to highlight a couple of the proposed amendments, and actually before I even hit on that, one of the things that I wanted to highlight for you this morning is that any of the amendments that are being proposed today would be on a go-forward basis. So there's no retroactivity to these. These would be, once approved by council, they would become in effect at that point. So just to highlight a couple of the proposals, the first being section 2.6.1, which is just taking the definition from the MGA and inserting that in here, which is the definition of family. Section 4.3, which speaks about council members who are representing the municipality reporting back to other members of council on their activities. Section 9.6, which provides some clarity on the use of electronic devices in camera sessions. Section 10.1, which adds conflict of interest in, which is in line with the Bill 20 and updates to the MGA that the province has made. Section 14.3, which Councillor Middleton Hope asked Mr. Sarsfield about earlier, which speaks to council remuneration on boards, commissions, and committees. And bullets 6 and 7, I'll highlight in a little bit more detail on the next couple of slides. So with that, next slide, please. So one of the big changes that we're looking or that we're proposing for council to consider today is changing the ability for any identifiable person to make a complaint. Right now, the city of Lethbridge is one of the few mid-sized municipalities in Alberta where only a member of council or council as a whole is able to make a complaint. This ensures or adds an additional layer of transparency and accountability and helps to maintain the integrity of council and fosters a culture of accountability and trust from the public. Next slide, please. This is just a quick summary of some of the other larger municipalities in Alberta, and as you can see, the vast majority here do have it where any person can make a complaint. Next slide, please. So tying the previous section on any identifiable person being able to make a complaint and the idea of an integrity commissioner, when allowing any identifiable person to make a complaint, administration would recommend the addition of an integrity commissioner who is an independent and objective third-party individual who would receive and investigate any complaints that came forward. It's important to note, and I'm not going to read through all the bullets here, I know you've had this in advance, but it is important to note that an integrity commissioner would provide recommendations to council, and it would ultimately be up to council to act on those recommendations and implement any actions. Next slide, please. And with that, the recommendation from administration would be that the governance SPC recommend that City Council provide first reading to Bylaw 6454, amendments to the Council Code of Conduct Bylaw 6125. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you have.
Thank you, Mr. Hillier. I know there will be questions, but we'll go to the public first, and then we will go to council or committee questions after that. I have no one who has signed up to speak on this. So we will then go into the audience. Is there anyone here who wishes to speak on 5.2 Council Code of Conduct Bylaw amendments? If so, please come forward, state your name, and you would have up to 5 minutes. Okay. So we will then move to questions from committee. First in the queue, Councillor Middleton Hope. And that.
Thank you. And Mr. Hillier, thank you for the update to the Code of Conduct bylaw. It's actually pretty good, and I appreciate the work that's gone into it. First question is, how much work does an integrity commissioner have in other cities cited previously in the presentation? I'm concerned that if we go ahead and we hire an integrity commissioner for the city of Lethbridge, do we have any idea how many investigations that person might have? Their background and so forth. So perhaps walk us through what other communities have done.
Yeah, and what I can say from the research that we've done, 2 municipalities, the 2 larger ones in Alberta, excuse me, Calgary and Edmonton do publish a certain amount of their statistics related to this. What I would say is on average in those municipalities, you see somewhere in the range of about 20 to 40 complaints that do come forward.
From a city of 1.6 million people?
Yep.
Okay.
That's what they've published. When you look at Edmonton, they both have the results a little bit different. With Edmonton's, what they post is the number that were actually investigated, which is roughly 50% of the ones that are that do come forward. So again, and as was highlighted in the presentation, what an integrity commissioner would do would actually be that filter to dismiss ones that actually had no grounds for basis for investigation. So Edmonton, they post the investigations. Calgary posts the number of reports that come to council, which on average is about 1 to 3 per year. So although a large number, maybe large is, I don't know if that's a large number, but about 50% in those ones do result in an investigation from the research we've seen, and with a very much smaller number that actually equal a formal report that would come to council.
Yeah, so they take about 50% of the complaints that come forward, about 50% of those complaints that do come forward are actually investigated. So what's the conclusion of the 50% that come forward?
And again, that's...
We're talking about sustained allegations, unsustained allegations, what?
Yeah, so I mean, what you would see in reports like that would be, so ones that actually are reported to council, meaning that there was some sort of action that the integrity commissioner would be recommending. So whatever it was that they were investigating, a behavior, a breach to the code, whatever that may be, that there was firstly would be there's a basis for an investigation, and then the second part, which is in Calgary's, would be that the investigation actually turned up a recommendation to council on an action that council would consider imposing on one of their members.
There's a whole host of things here. I don't mean to be argumentative, but there's a whole host of things here that I would really like to see vetted by this process. I mean, how many complaints are generally fielded by other municipalities? What do they do with those complaints? How many of them are managed through informal resolution as opposed to any kinds of consequences? What are the consequences contained in this? So at this point, I don't see enough of that, but I do appreciate the comments. My last question then would be, have we looked at other models that do not necessarily include an integrity commissioner, and are there any others that might be provided to this committee in the future?
What I would say to that is it would be the recommendation of administration that an integrity commissioner, if we did go to the any identifiable person making the complaint, our recommendation would be an integrity commissioner would be the best model. With that being said, when you look across municipalities, there's a number of different setups that they do have. Again, Red Deer, Calgary, Edmonton would be of that model. Some of the smaller municipalities, it is still council investigating themselves, which is always a possibility. When you look, Medicine Hat in there, and again, theirs has not been passed yet, but with theirs, they have a council committee that would evaluate any of the complaints that come in, and that council committee would decide what goes to the integrity commissioner. So there would be other models, but it would be our recommendation to go with an integrity commissioner doing the full investigation.
So, Madam Chair, my third question, or would you like to move on?
3 seems to be your lucky number today, so go right ahead.
All right. Are we contemplating outsourcing this position to perhaps a law firm or something of that nature? Or are we thinking about bringing it in-house and asking legal services to manage it? Because I sense that there are some legal requirements in this. So what is our position on this thus far?
Yeah, so the recommendation would be that it is a third party, likely a law firm.
Outsourced on a contract basis type of thing?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
And now for the rebuttal, Councillor Dodick.
You know, this feels like if you don't try at first, try again. And the reason I say that is that back in 2021, we had all that information about the integrity commissioner, whether it's going to be done on a contract basis or a per case basis, and there was a lot of information provided, and we had discussions and questions and everything else, and a big debate about, on it as a council. And then the resolution for the amendment to add an integrity commissioner in the bylaw that was presented at that time was rescinded on April 26, 22. Is that not right, that we've had a fulsome discussion on this already with all of the questions, even the questions that Councillor Middleton Hope asked were answered that time? And I have a specific recollection of that. Didn't that happen?
That is correct.
Okay. So My understanding is that, I might be incorrect in that regard, that the province is looking potentially at doing a province-wide integrity commissioner. Now, this brings back, the city of Lethbridge did a smoking bylaw when the province says, no, that's the municipalities have to do it. So we did it, and then shortly thereafter, they did their own smoking bylaw, which completely superseded ours. Am I not correct in thinking that, in fact, the province is looking at this and potentially doing this?
If you want to provide your information, then I can provide some as well from Alberta municipalities.
For sure, absolutely, and that's again where I was going to go with this, is that it is through my understanding is it is being considered and it has been spoken about at Alberta municipalities, but I'm not sure what level of traction that it would have at this point, and Councillor Crowson, you may have more to add to that.
So there is expected to be a resolution coming forward at Alberta municipalities to request exactly that there be a provincial integrity commissioner, because if we are expected to have a code of conduct, then the hope is that the expectation would be that the province would apply or to have one. It's also part of the submission of Alberta municipalities under Bill 20, that they are also looking at there should be one. So there is at this point no provincial one, but the plan is that there will be one similar to how there's the provincial ombudsman, have a provincial integrity commissioner. So it might be something we could add to the motion if, that an advocacy to support a provincial integrity commissioner could be something that we recommend council look into as well, because that would solve not just ours, but a lot of council's concerns about how to pay for an integrity commissioner.
Okay, well, the recommendation I would refer to council, or I would to support, is that, but I would also ask that the red line changes in the bylaw, if you're going to do a first reading of this bylaw, that the red line changes in 2.10, 17.0, and 18 be omitted from the first reading of the bylaw. Those are the ones that deal with the integrity commissioner. And the reason for that is that we've done this already and have had a discussion on it, and it concerns me that it's, it just keeps coming up, even though we've had some discussion on it. But that's just my thinking. So those are my thoughts.
Well, and of course, from a process, it could be removed as a recommendation, and then on second reading of the bylaw, somebody could ask it to be inserted back in. So, I mean, there's possible ways of doing it from a process perspective. All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rem. Let's not confuse the issue. That's my job as chair. Oh, no, it's not. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for the work that you've done on this, Mr. Hillier. In going through this, just a few things that I would request be looked at and changed. In our directed resolutions that we saw at council on Tuesday, CC 15 was indicated that it would be included in this code of conduct, and that is our attendance at political functions. And I don't see that in this at this time. So before I'm even prepared to move on that, I mean, I'd like to see that that's in there because it is part of our status of directed resolutions. And then just in looking at this on page or item 17.1, we're changing identifiable person may pursue the informal complaint process as the first means of remedying conduct that they believe violates the code. We're changing the must to may, and I will not support that kind of change to a may. I think it needs to be must. You must go through that informal complaint process first. That is standard HR best practices that you have to, you might not want to talk to the individual, but you need to talk to the individual first and have that conversation. Whether that's a public complaint coming forward or a complaint amongst ourselves, that should certainly be coming forward first. So that informal process needs to be done. That needs to be a must, not a may. Okay. I'll step out for now unless...
I don't see anybody else in the queue, but I am getting a heads up, Mr. Brierley, that you may have something you wish to comment on right now.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. I just wanted to weigh in on on a point here about how we're here today. So sometime back, I honestly can't remember when, we were, as it needs to be reviewed in this term, but also asked to bring this forward and look at anything that should be addressed or covered as far as changes. And so one of the things, so to Councillor Dodick's comment about Integrity Commissioner, our job as administration is to bring all of the things forward for consideration, recognizing the thoughts on the Integrity Commissioner, but to bring all of those forward for committee and council's consideration. And should you choose to accept them, remove them, or add other things, such as Councillor Schmidt-Rempel has admitted, that is exactly what we look to you for. Thank you.
Okay, we'll go to Councillor Carlson online.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and forgive me if I missed it in Mr. Hillier's presentation or the attached information, but the questions arising around the members' complaints versus members of the public complaints, and if you got rid of the Integrity Commissioner, could there still be a way to address the ability for the public to make formal or informal complaints about members of council?
So if we did have any identifiable person being able to make a complaint and remove the Integrity Commissioner, if we did leave it the same, then those complaints would go to council, as stated right now, to review those complaints and make recommendations.
Okay, so it could be accomplished to at least accomplish one of the goals, which is to not just always have it being council making complaints about ourselves or each other, but to allow other members of the public to make these complaints. And we could follow the process that we currently follow if it's a councillor's complaint against another councillor, to allow that same process to follow out if it was a member of the public. And is that correct? We could do that?
From my understanding, that would be correct. I would look to the solicitor to comment if he feels any differently.
That is correct. Our current process would allow for that to occur. The only part that's a little bit unclear in the current process is the process of necessarily how those would flow through. And so if that is the path, it may be a recommendation to build a more defined procedure for intake and obtaining an investigator when not, and moving them through the actual complaint process.
Okay, thank you for that. Final question, if I can, Madam Chair, is I believe Mr. Hillier said in the presentation that one of the issues is council investigating itself. Are there other communities that do it the way I've just described, that we could follow our current process, albeit opening it up to the public to make complaints? Are there any other communities that do it that way? Or do they all use an Integrity Commissioner or investigator outside?
No, there are other communities that would have council doing the investigation.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Forgive me for my sidebar, there's just some process question on the motion that we were looking at. So we have next in the queue, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
So to follow up on what Mr. Brierley had said and the process of all of this, because I've got quite a few questions and changes. Did you work with any members of council on this, on the revision for this?
So I did not specifically sit with any members of council to work through this. Did have engagement with the clerk's office to try to include, but it obviously looks like there was one omitted there, but to include any resolutions that would have come from council that needed to be included in here. So yeah, I worked with the clerk's office, the solicitor's office to do that.
Okay, so I'm wondering, Chair Crowson, if an idea might be to bring this updated this updated bylaw to a working group of council to discuss and work through, since this is the first time council is seeing it and we've had it for a week. Bring it to a working group of council to go through, review it, and then bring it back to a future governance SPC to review with the changes, with having the discussion around the integrity commissioner, all of that. So giving council the opportunity to have that discussion, or, I mean, we can work through the changes right here, but there still seems to be a lot of questions about and around the integrity commissioner, wondering what Alberta municipalities will be, that kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if it might not be worth doing that and having members of council work through this as well.
Okay. So I'm going to then ask a process question of Mr. Westerson and maybe Mr. Sarsfield. If it is the feeling of committee that there are some changes that might take longer than such could be done in this meeting, is there an opportunity to send it to, and then, for lack of a better term, a working group that any member of council could be invited to, or this committee could take charge of, whichever is the decision? Is that a possibility? Or does it have to be worked through now, or, et cetera?
We don't necessarily have anything called a working group. My general advice at this point in time would be refer this back to administration with some of the feedback that's been generated today to review and maybe engage on a different level
with council,
with council or anyone else, and then come back at a different point in time. Currently, you don't have any other scheduled meetings of the Governance Standing Policy Committee, of course, which seems to be the venue in which this bylaw is often spoken at until October. So that may be the most effective, seeing how Mr. Hillier has been most involved with it at this point in time.
And I apologize for adding to your workload,
There's
Mr.
just
Hillier.
a suggestion on the table. Again, looking around for any consensus. Does that make sense? Because then we would already have Alberta municipalities. The resolution would have gone forward. We can see how that goes on the Integrity Commissioner. And I'm just spitballing here. Councillor Middleton Hope?
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think waiting for Alberta municipalities to make a decision, if that process is successful, and that we get some kind of traction on, we're going to create a province-wide code of conduct and a province-wide integrity commissioner who would be responsible for administering the code of conduct and what that might look like. I can certainly live with that. I think sometimes I have difficulties when we bring the same issue back up for 3 or 4 times. That is the case here. We have voted on this. We have dealt with this previously. So we are now moving down the road, and I think that's a good suggestion to let's leave it for till after Alberta municipalities has had an opportunity to kick this around, and if we get any traction, let's see where it goes.
So we will use that time to refer it back to admin, to do some more engagement with, for sure, the members of this committee and any members of council who wish to, and that will mean it wouldn't be back to us at the earliest till October, which would be after Alberta municipalities. Is that a motion that I'm sort of seeing consensus around? Oh, go ahead, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
I would just add that if we are waiting till after Alberta municipalities, November, we are having some budget discussions as well. So if the idea of integrity commissioner fails at Alberta municipalities, we'll be able to bring any budget implications that integrity commissioner might have to budget as well in November. So yeah, I think that engaging with Mr. Hillier on this between now and then as members of council would be a good way to go.
Okay. Councillor Dodick, I know it's just consensus right now, but are you okay with that motion being drafted? Are you okay if we draft a motion that can be debated on referring this back to admin for more engagement with council and then bringing it back to governance?
Sure.
Okay, which means we will need a bit of a break, Mr. Westerson, to draft that? Okay. Oh,
Madam Chair.
Councillor Carlson, go right ahead, sorry.
No worries. Thank you. Just a point of clarity. I think we all need to understand that Alberta municipalities, if that resolution is carried, it really means nothing. It means they would go forward to the government with the idea, and it's finally the government that would have to put this in place. So just didn't want people to think that by October we would know, oh yes, a integrity commissioner is for the province is on the way. We would know that Alberta Municipalities is going to take it forward to talk to the government of Alberta, and we know how quickly those things go. So I just didn't want people to think that by October we would know about this.
You're absolutely right, Councillor Carlson. It would simply give us a little more information on what direction it might be going. We certainly wouldn't have a final answer. And we also know Alberta Municipalities is looking at this also under Bill 20, which of course is also in the province's hand. So yes, we would not have any answers by then, but it also allows time for some other ideas that might be coming forward on this. So we'll use the time the best we can. Mr. Brierley, I believe you also have something you wish to speak on this?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. So my thought for coming back, so the document that's before you today is based on considerable research from Mr. Hillier and his team and Mr. Faust's input and so forth. The discussion and the engagement, what I'm trying to do is ensure that you're all considered equally. If we come back and there were other suggestions for inclusion, just be indicated differently where council as a whole has the opportunity to debate that exact phrasing or what that item might be for inclusion or change or what have you, if that makes sense. So it would be slightly different than here, but on the surface might seem the same. Does that make any sense or not? No?
I think you need to rephrase that in the form of the motion.
So let me, there might be a certain member that says, I would really like this piece included. And others say, oh my God, I don't want that included. Whereas the document that's before you now is based on research from other codes of conduct that have been adopted across the province and the country and so forth. So slightly different as opposed to an individual interest that might want to be discussed and debated.
Yeah, no, I know what you mean, that this document has to be something all of council can eventually live with. It can't be something that,
Yep.
I think some of the things that might be of consideration, though, integrity commissioner is more than one person. So I think if we do the public engagement with council on the things that are larger, rather than being an individual choice. Yeah. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
Nothing further to add to that. I was just, yeah.
Okay. So is that all as clear as mud, Mr. Westerson? Okay, so we will need 3 minutes to finalize the motion, and then again, that can still be debated, but we will have a motion to debate in about 3 minutes. motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee refer this item to administration to consider the Standing Policy Committee's feedback and have further engagement with Council. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee, further be it resolved that administration report back to the Governance Standing Policy Committee at a future meeting. It's not exactly what's written, but I hope it will be what's written once I've said it. Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, that is your motion.
Guess it is. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And thank you very much again, Mr. Hillier, for the work that's been done on this. Certainly it's extensive and we appreciate it. Very well investigated. I do just see that as we're going through this, certainly all of us would have individual changes. But now what I think the next logical step would be for Mr. Hillier to have engagement with members of council on this in order for council to take a look at it, provide some feedback, and then move forward with it coming back to the Governance Standing Policy Committee and then moving it forward to council for acceptance. I just think we will see a better result when we come with that engagement done. If none of my colleagues, I see Councillor Middleton Hope has a question.
I'm not sure if it's a question or debate, but go ahead, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Well, I guess it's both. I thought in our conversations on the sidebar that we were talking about attending to the Alberta municipalities' discussion and or decisions vis-a-vis provincial integrity commissioners. I see nothing of this in there. So is it contemplated?
We could do a motion arising if you want to do advocacy around that. But this, because we do not meet again until October, they cannot bring it back to us until after Alberta municipalities has happened. So that it just in effect is going to happen anyways.
Well, I mean, I don't want to protract this, but that's what the discussion was about over there, was talking about the fact that we wanted to wait until Alberta municipalities had an opportunity to decide whether they were going to go with a provincial integrity commissioner or not in order to move forward with this process. So again, I don't see it there, so I'd have to create another motion.
You could do an amendment to this if you'd like to see that in the motion. You can do a motion arising if you want to do something specifically.
I'm just wondering why, when we had this conversation, I'm just wondering why it's not in there.
Mr. Westerson, is there a reason this did not get in, or is it just, like I said, I made the assumption that since it's not going to come back at a certain date, it's just kind of in there.
Well, I'm wondering if my council colleagues view it as important. I do.
Okay. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, do you have something to speak on?
No, my thought was that the Integrity Commissioner would be spoken about with us each individually as Mr. Hillier did his additional engagement, and that since we know that this is a motion coming forward at Alberta municipalities, and since this can't come back to us any earlier than October, that would be part of the discussions with members of council and something else we are alerted to and would be watching out for. So as far as I was concerned, that was already included in this, because it is already included in here. And my assumption would be is we would be working from the new document as we engaged with Mr. Hillier.
But it doesn't, Councillor Middleton Hope, are you hoping to see something stronger in there?
Well, in this motion, are you talking about this motion? Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, it would be something to the effect that we're attending on Alberta municipalities' debate and decisions, vis-a-vis a provincial integrity commissioner. I think that weighs heavily on further discussions about this, and I would suggest that where's the utility in Mr. Hillier having conversations with us through the summertime, at least trying to schedule those discussions through the summertime, and just to be told in September, well, we've got a motion going forward from Alberta municipalities that says we are petitioning the provincial government to establish a provincial integrity commissioner. That's a lot of work, and I'm just wondering if there's utility in that.
Well, I think there are some things in this that would be part of the engagement regardless of whether, not just on the integrity commissioner. Mm-hmm. So I think what's in here stands. But then, do you want a motion arising that would do advocacy around the integrity commissioner, or, you know what I mean? Like,
if it can't be a part of this resolution, if we don't want to include that as a friendly amendment to it, then let's do a motion of arising from it.
Okay, does that work though? I'm not trying to force something on you.
Well, that doesn't work very well, but
No,
yes,
it
that'll
doesn't.
be just fine.
Okay, so we will deal with this motion as written, and then we will expect a motion arising.
So, point of clarification then, in voting against this motion, no. So you can vote in favor of this motion and then decide whether or not to vote in favor of the motion arising.
Yep. Absolutely.
Yep.
Okay.
Okay, so we have the motion on the floor, question has been called, all in favor? All right, so that one passes. Now, if you want to draft with Mr. Westerson, your motion arising, we will give you some time to do that. Or has he already got one for you to review?
Just ignore the further reading. Do you stand behind what you've written here? Are you prepared to put your firstborn on this?
Every day I do what I can.
Yeah, it's fine.
Is that what you want?
Yeah, it's fine.
Hold on. Tell me. I'm emailing it to you.
Madam Chair.
Yes, Councillor Carlson, or the voice just in the room somewhere.
Sorry, I keep raising my hand, but I don't think you have anyone beside you monitoring. It seemed to be talking with Councillor Middleton Hope. So I thought I'd just jump in. I had a question. Was Councillor Middleton Hope's only concern was that this discussion, engagement with council, further engagement with council, happen following the Alberta municipalities discussion? Because that seems to me, what I thought I heard John saying, Councillor Middleton Hope saying, was that the discussion with council around the feedback and et cetera with administration should happen after the Alberta municipalities. That was the only thing I thought I heard John trying to.
Yeah, so that was part of it.
I think that was part of it, he just said. I don't think that was in his concept in entirety.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right.
And your printout is coming.
So we're getting close. Whenever he runs through the printer, we know we almost have a draft motion to present.
And it's extensive.
Very extensive? Okay. So this is the draft motion that we have. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council conduct advocacy relating to a Provincial Integrity Commissioner at the 2024 Alberta Municipalities Convention. Now, do you want to limit it just to the convention, or do you just want us to stop after conduct advocacy relating to a Provincial Integrity Commissioner, period?
Yep.
Okay, so we'll take the at the 2024 Alberta
Because
Municipalities.
as Madam Chair, as you're well aware, and I'm sure members of the committee are well aware, this has been on the radar. We, as a city, have actually brought this to the attention of Alberta municipalities to bring this forward. So we are actually driving that. They have accepted it, and they are taking it to the convention. I think it shouldn't come as any surprise that I look for council's support in regards to this particular amendment.
No, and it was a decision of the provincial government that we have to have a code of conduct, and it would make sense that to support code of conducts across the province, that we have a provincial integrity commissioner. So we have the motion on the floor by Councillor Middleton Hope. Is there any debate on this motion? Oh, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel has a question.
Just a question for clarification on what you stated, Councillor Middleton Hope. Are you bringing the Integrity Commissioner motion forward at Alberta municipalities?
No, I'm not. Although
okay.
I'm talking with Mr. Gandam, I understand that is a direction that Alberta municipalities is taking.
Okay, sorry, I understood that you were bringing this forward.
No,
in
I
your
brought
statement,
it-
I just understood
Yeah,
that
so
you were
on-
bringing it forward.
Previous discussions with him, I brought this, he solicited information from councillors across the
Yeah,
province.
okay.
This is an area that I brought forward to him. He's indicated in speaking with the board that this is something they want to bring forward. Let's hope it makes it to the agenda.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, back to process. This motion is on the floor. I'm going to assume you've called the question.
Closed. Yep, call the question.
Question's been called. All in favor? And he likes anything we don't have to pay for ourselves. All right. We move now to item 5.3. Ms. Kleisinger, Director of Community Services, and Mr. Gauthier, Government Relations Manager, and Ms. Williams, Corporate Communications Team Lead, on the Physician Action Plan update. So which of the three, or do you have somebody else back there who's going to do it? Okay, Ms. Kleisinger, the floor is yours if you want to bring your presentation.
Thank you very much, members of SPC, and thank you for the opportunity to present today. We will be brief and then open it up to questions. Of note, there are two different verbiages in these presentations. One is Physician Recruitment Action Plan, and one speaks to shortages. I'd just like to note that with herein forward, we will be calling it a Physician Recruitment Action Plan. Next slide, please. So as you are all aware, this has been a topic for City Council for many years. I would say that predates the last election, as many members of the community were coming to Council expressing their concerns for lack of family physicians. City Council has directed administration in the past for an action plan that we did work through for a number of years. The last direction that we received on May 14th, 2024 was to update that plan to better reflect the work that's been completed to date, look at the new current situation after physician recruitment has been in place for a couple of years through the Alberta government and AHS, and look at a refreshed marketing plan. So also to note is that City Council has already allocated $15,000 for that marketing and recruitment campaign, so that because that's been approved, this work will commence immediately and is now sitting with administration. So today we're just here for an update for Council and for questions. Also of note is an advocacy letter was also sent to the Health Minister on June 2nd following that May 14th meeting. Administration will return in early 2025 with the marketing and advocacy plan results as well. Next slide, please. Oh. So to talk about the current situation in Lethbridge, I want to address a few different areas, and I do have some numbers that I will be able to share as well. But what I would say is one of the big wins that we have seen for the city of Lethbridge is the Southern Alberta Medical Program and the addition of family physicians. Those are two things that we know have been 3 out of 4 aren't listening. Those are two things that we know have been worked on for a number of years, and I would say have been big successes. On July 11th, AHS did send a PSA that there was a temporary reduction of staff for July and August for our emergency department, which is why we just reflect that there are some changes and some things that make the work of council even more important when talking about specialty positions. So I would say the emerging need for specialty physicians and health professionals in the areas of anesthesiology, cardiology, child and adolescent mental health, diagnostic imaging, emergency medicine, geriatrics, internal medicine, obstetrics and gynecology, and pain management are all very much important topics for the South Zone and for the City of Lethbridge. Recently, the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Alberta had a report that was released by Alberta Health that would say that there are gains in many areas and that Lethbridge is seeing increases. And we do know that from the stats from AHS as well, that they continue to recruit in all areas. Not saying that I believe that the City of Lethbridge needs are being met currently, but that with each day they are getting better and improving. Next slide, please. So in the updated plan, we have administration is working on 2 primary focus areas, and those are within marketing and advocacy. And as I said before, that'll begin in July 2024, which is this month and is already underway. And then we will bring back an evaluation for you in 2025. Some of the things to note in marketing is, as with the last plan, we have a lot to offer in the City of Lethbridge in terms of quality of life, and believe it's a great place for a specialty or family physician to come move their families and to live and work here. So that is one of the focuses that we will be working on. The City of Lethbridge in 2021 rebranded, and I just want to read a little bit about what that brand statement is. City of Lethbridge rebranded to be more reflective of our growing and evolving city. The position statement that was created in the rebranding initiative says that Lethbridge is Alberta's blueprint for success, the solution that integrates community strength, strong roots, ingenuity, opportunity, and purpose, built to serve and grow an evolving community. The brand purpose is to continue to be a progressive city that attracts residents, businesses, and visitors. So now that more than ever, we believe it's important to market our community to all, including physicians and their families. In terms of advocacy, we also see the City of Lethbridge and the Chinook Regional Hospital as a health hub for the surrounding areas of the South Zone. So the advocacy plan will be focused on our partners in other municipalities who also require these physicians in our community to serve the entire South Zone. So with that, I would say that we have two plans that we have included for council, and anything within those we would be happy to discuss in camera. And the rest of it, we'd be open to any type of questions. Mr. Gauthier for advocacy, Ms. Grindle for marketing, and then me as well as the overall approach. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Kleisinger. Is there any member of the public who would wish to speak on this matter before the committee? Okay. I don't see anyone. I do see, though, for questions. We'll start with Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have lots of questions, actually, and I know that's a surprise. It'll be a surprise for Ms. Kleisinger, for sure. I was encouraged to hear that you indicated at the end of your comments that we are focused on a regional response. Some time ago, there was a program where the regional hospitals in Coaldale, Raymond, Pitcher Butte, Blairmore would focus on specific healthcare activities, and that was ancillary and supportive of the regional hospital. For example, Blairmore became responsible for, I believe it was, knees and hips. And so I appreciate your comments on that. Did you want to have an opportunity to expand on that a little bit and provide some insights into how we are leveraging that relationship with other healthcare institutions around the province or around Southern Alberta? You can say no. I'm okay with that.
I would say we need to follow up with AHS on their approach. What we had envisioned for advocacy work was at the more of the political level in terms of let me preface with the fact that I do agree with you that there's a thread to pull on, and we will definitely pull on that with AHS.
A which? A thread to pull on?
Yes.
Okay.
However, with municipalities, the previous action plan, we did meet with Lethbridge County, and they did agree, and in a meaningful way, I would say they put in their own funding for marketing to say that they do believe that Lethbridge and the regional hospital is a hub, and that they did think it was valuable for their residents. And we have heard from Councillor Schmidt-Rembel through her conversations and others that there are other communities surrounding Lethbridge that agree.
I'm sorry, what did Councillor Schmidt-Rembel have to do with that?
In her conversations had let us know that there are other communities and politicians that do believe that they would like to hear more about the advocacy efforts that we could do jointly.
Okay. I just have a comment, and I do appreciate the work that's gone into this. Please don't let me suggest that I don't. But I see I've got my one question up. Now I've got two more. I don't care about looks on social media, quite honestly. I know some people do. Success rate of a campaign, I would be interested to determine if we go back and we interview the 27 doctors that have come to this city in the last 12 months, 15 months, 18 months, whatever it is, what was it that influenced their decision? Rather than worrying about how many looks there are on social media, let's go back and interview these doctors and say, so what was it that finally allowed you to pull the trigger and actually come to Lethbridge and set up shop here? Because I don't see it as a success unless it attracts doctors. Having looks by people in Ontario that never come out here doesn't do us a whole lot of good, quite honestly. So that's just simply a comment. In light of that, here's the question. The question is, we've put $15,000 into this. Is it enough? Does Economic Development Lethbridge have funding for doctor recruitment and marketing, or do they need more money?
The $15,000 that council allocated goes directly to our internal departments to work on a campaign. Economic Development Lethbridge has worked in our previous action plan on their own. I do believe Mr. Lewing has said in the past it isn't the current mandate, and so it's something they're kind of doing on the side of their desk, but not something that's currently funded. So what I would say is there's money. You can always do more with more money. We're comfortable with $15,000 as a starting point. It did see some pretty good reach last time, and we will continue. One of the things that we did find is that we had a lot of paid media, but also a lot of earned media. So we were seeing the Globe and Mail and the National Post and other credible newspapers across the country that were noticing that Lethbridge has chosen to do things a little bit differently. You have chosen, I'd say City Council has led in this area for a number of years to say that it's your residents and you are, whether it's your jurisdiction or whether you're doing the recruitment directly, do have a role to play in recruitment.
Thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Chair Crowson, and thank you very much, Ms. Kleisinger, for bringing this back. Certainly appreciate the report on this and the updates to the plan. The one question I have is, does the plan include, again, going out to surrounding communities? We went to the county to present on this, and as I've chatted with you on the physician recruitment strategy over the years, we've had some interest in other communities. Does the plan include going out to surrounding communities to seek support of our plan, and particularly given that this is a type of regional approach?
The short answer is yes.
Okay.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, without getting into too much detail, it contemplates that aspect for sure.
That we would go out to present this to other communities, seek their support, and see how they'd like to contribute.
Yep, we will do some research data gathering to help make a compelling case to the value that is delivered in Lethbridge, not only to city residents, but also to residents of surrounding communities.
Okay. And then just a follow-up question with regards to the earned media that we received on this, and perhaps Ms. Grindle can report on this. Do we know what the earned media compared to the paid media return was? Or, yeah.
I don't have like a specific number. I know we did see a lot of good uptake, and when you get those more national stories, then we saw a lot more uptake, even from our local media than to and regional media. So anecdotally, we felt like as a communications team that there was a lot more pickup there for sure.
Okay. And I'm just wondering if maybe we could track that in the future, just knowing that we pay for something, what is the earned return on that? Because that's really important because it shows our dollar going
We can
further.
definitely go back and pull some of that
I'd be
information,
curious
too.
on that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I see no more questions in the queue, so we will move to the motion. I have a motion from Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee receive the Physician Shortage Action Plan update as information. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council direct administration to report back on the activities and outcomes of the plan to the Governance Standing Policy Committee in Q1 2025. And further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions and documents with respect to the Physician Shortage Action Plan update remain confidential pursuant to Sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, Chair Crowson. So while Lethbridge continues to see the number of family physicians grow, we've seen that reported in the past month here, to meet the needs of the population in southwestern Alberta, there are a number of specialty areas in Lethbridge that do require advocacy and attention so that we do not get into crisis. Ms. Kleisinger outlined that list, and it was in our presentation, so I won't go on to repeat that. On May 14th, 2024, Lethbridge City Council voted unanimously specifically to update the physician action plan to reflect that work that has been completed to date and the current situation in Lethbridge and the creation of a refreshed marketing plan. That's what we are looking at today. This new physician recruitment action plan will focus on two main areas, marketing and advocacy, and the strategies contained within those two areas will begin in July and be completed and evaluated by December 2024. And if I see Councillor Middleton Hope either has questions or is in for debate.
Thank you. And Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you answered my question, which was physician shortage action plan. That's not what we agreed we were going to call this. We're calling this the physician recruitment action plan. Let's please be consistent.
Okay, I'm taking that will be a friendly. We can just change the name of the motion. Are you okay with that, Councillor? Yep. Okay.
Yeah, I kind of assumed we would anyway.
Okay. So with those changes, with those changes, question's been called. All in favor? Perfect. Thank you. We move now into our one submission. We have a submission 6.1. Daryl Matthews, Chief Financial Officer and Treasurer, Succession Planning for Council Planning Policy. Now, my colleagues will remember that this was referred to us from Council, and it was a request to pull some information together, and that we are only looking at this for information. We will begin there just with that overall understanding. Now, because, of course, this is an SPC, we open first to the public. And waiting patiently to have a chance to speak is Mr. Jim Culver, who would like to speak on this item. So, Mr. Culver, now is your opportunity. If you'd like to come up, the floor is yours to speak up to 5 minutes on this item on the agenda. And hopefully you had fun during the rest of the meeting as well.
I'm sorry for my former faux pas there, but
I
might be a little schizophrenic in the way I present this, but I'd like to start out with the plan or the proposal for a pension for council members. How is this going to be done? Who is going to administer this pension? I'm sure you're going to have to pay in a certain percentage of your incomes from city council, but who is going to pay the other, or is it going to be strictly on your own to get a pension of sorts? Who could answer that question, please?
How this will work, if you just want to pose the question, we will ask it later. But remember, this is just for information. We're not in any way actually suggesting a pension for council. This is coming from Councillor Carlson's motion to look into it, but nothing is being moved forward at this time on this. We're just taking all the information administration put together and just saying thank you very much for the information. Only if a member of council ever wishes to bring this back as their own motion will this in any way move forward. So at this point, we can't answer those questions because we're not actually looking into it as an action to go forward on.
So really, I shouldn't be here talking about this.
We love that you are here. We so much agree that, because this is a concern I think not only you would have, but other members of the public.
I'm kind of on my own. My other council members are either on the golf course or Pop's Pub right now, so I'm by myself. But anyway, you can't answer the question I just posed.
No, because we're not actually going to be moving forward on it. Well, right now, it's just for,
When will this be made public?
All the information that is on there on the agenda is public, but only if a member of council looks at this information and says, I want to bring a motion back on it, would it move forward. At this point, it will literally just stay as information for the public and not move forward unless a member of council chooses to go forward on it.
How would I learn this? Through Mr. Bieber or how?
No, you would learn about it through our agenda. So we always post the agendas a week before any meeting. And any motion that a member of council comes forward would be posted a week in advance. And you would find it there. And trust me, if a pension is suggested, the media also would jump all over it.
So I would learn how it's going to be set up.
Yeah, if anybody chooses to bring it forward, that's when we would look into any.
Okay, and where would this agenda be? Posted in the city hall, or?
Actually, if you were, this is our last thing, then we'll be adjourned. We have one more motion, and that would give you a chance to speak to Mr. Westerson. He can explain to you where it all is posted. So if you wanted to have a seat, you can talk to the City Clerk's Department afterwards, and they can provide you all that information so that you're not surprised going ahead.
Or I could find that out eventually on 311, I guess.
311 is amazing. They're magic with all their answers as well, yes.
I don't know about that, but anyway. Having said that and learned that, I'll say one thing to begin with. I was at the meeting yesterday, and thank God democracy is not really dead yet. I was impressed with the meeting and the councillors. And I must say, maybe to your disgruntlement, Mrs. Schmidt-Rempel, I'm glad that this is not going to a third party speaking about your succession and so forth like that. It was voted down, I think it was 7-2. But if I'm wording this properly, my alleged mind sometimes doesn't work. But anyway, I guess I should have had an agenda, folks. But anyway.
No, we love hearing from the public at all times. Don't worry.
Yeah, okay. I don't know what else to say based on that, other than the fact that I'm sure you people are all here because of altruistic means. When you come on council, it wasn't for money. I'm not asking a question, I'm assuming. So based on that, I know you're getting salaries, but it started to bother me that this was becoming a kind of a money grab. Is that a bad thing to say with regard to pensions? Receiving more money, and you're being overloaded on council. Really, if you work 20 hours or 60 hours, that is your own, that's up to you individually. And I don't think you should be reimbursed for X number of hours. And with regard to succession, the way I understand it, when the mayor is away, he could be in Paris for 2 weeks now, I don't know. But when somebody takes over, is it all about the money? In other words, he gets the mayor's rate for as long as he's acting? Or am I got this whole thing wrong, folks?
He does not get the mayor's wage, but the deputy and acting mayor do get a % increase for their time.
So the whole thing of succession would be based on, you know, probably dealing with new members of council with regard to pensions and reimbursement?
Again, we're not sure because we're not actually looking into it. So it's all theoretical at this point of how that would be because it's not moving forward at this time.
Yeah, well, okay, based on that, I guess that's about all I got to say, and I'm just going to have to wait.
And
Well,
if we know more, we will post it.
Yeah, and this, all council will know about this, eh?
Anything we do goes forward to council, either as a recommendation or as information, so yes.
Yeah, this is only my second time in council in many years when I sat back in the gallery with about 20 of my fellow workers. But that's another story. As Gordon Lightfoot would say, another empty bottle and another tale to tell. So based on that, I guess there's nothing more for me to say.
Thank you very much, Mr. Culver.
Thank you all very much, folks.
Have a good afternoon. So I do then have a motion from Councillor Dodick, unless anybody... Oh, Councillor Carlson, do you have a question? You're flashing us.
Sorry, I was waiting for that 5-minute buzzer. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a question on this. First and foremost, pension is not part of it. I don't know if Mr. Culver is there or not. I'm not sure how that got raised in his mind. Pension was never part of the motion. So unlike our local firefighters, city employees, police that do get a pension, pension was no way, shape, or form part of the motion in referral. So I don't know if he needed that answer, but hopefully that gives him some comfort. One question I had is the bulk of the motion dealt with sort of the succession planning and sort of planning on how council would deal with long-term absences, especially once a by-election was deemed unnecessary. So say the mayor flees the country or just decides he wants a better business opportunity or whatever, and whoever is deputy mayor at that time, they just become mayor, or does council decide? That was the main part of the motion, was to sort of look into how council would navigate that. And I wonder if we looked into any of that information. If other municipalities actually do have a plan for that,
I'm
or
going
is
to
it
let
just
Mr. Westerson answer your question because I believe that is already in place. And Mr. Westerson, I think, has the answer there.
You know, and thanks, Councillor or Madam Chair. I know it is in place. It says, I believe it's the procedure bylaws where it deals with it. But my comment was, say the mayor has to leave early, and the deputy mayor, whoever gets appointed, as Mr. Culver was talking about remuneration would have to be a consideration. And I don't think that's considered anywhere. And so I just thought, I'm always a good policy. Policy is always good to have something to look at. If it was a bunch of new councillors never been through absences before, they wouldn't know where to begin. So that was my question was, are there any good policies out there around succession planning? And that was just my term for it. It's basically just how to deal with emerging situations.
I do believe Mr. Westerson does want to speak to it, or not?
Want to?
Will be advised to.
You are correct, Councillor Carlson, and thank you, Chair Crowson. It does exist for what happens, who does what. Within the procedure bylaw, there's components in the MJA as well. Now, when it comes to the principles of remuneration for extended periods of time, that would be something that I believe council has a remuneration policy. That's a mouthful. A remuneration policy that may or may not be worked into. I would look to my colleagues in Treasury and Financial Services with regards to the financial component in the policy there, but it may be something that would be better aligned to look at. I believe some of the information and
Based on what I'm hearing, Mr. Matthews, is there, as we're looking at policies, is that something that is under that policy and something we should be looking at if this is a concern?
Thank you, Councillor Crowson, and back to you, Councillor Carlson. In regards to this, I'm just glancing through the policy right now when it comes to remuneration. It is a tough word to say. In regards to that, it looks like in here, it says in here, when council serves as in the role of deputy mayor, their compensation is increased. So I would, at this stage here, I need to go through it a little bit closer in the policy side, and maybe that's something we need to take a look at for that example. But based by this policy, for the period of time they're as deputy or acting, they would get that amount of remuneration. And then I think then further on, council, we'd have to take a look at the MGA and what would happen if it was a long period or they were no longer able to serve as mayor, in regards to what the process was for council to either appoint another mayor or election for another mayor, or what's the process for that? I think that would be the next steps.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And thank you, Madam Chair. And that's what I'd be keen to sort of have brought back as well, is just to sort of look at, do other communities have a plan in place? We've seen in other communities mayors being removed, mayors being sanctioned, and I don't know how they deal with it. And maybe they don't know how they deal with it either, and it's just on an ad hoc basis. But for me, having some sort of policy in place of how council would deal with those types of situations, I think it is important. Oh, at least it's helpful. I always, if there's ever a question on anything arise, I'm always asked, do we have a policy on that? And good policy helps guide. So thank you. I'd like to see more of that.
Thank you. Now, Councillor Dodek believes he also has part of the answer. Are you answering or questioning?
Question.
Well, we're going to stay on this question until we get it answered. He thinks he gets.
Yes. No. It's an interesting question, but I think the answer is quite simple, is that council is the one that sets the salary of the mayor and the councillors. So if for some reason, whether it be, if it's not within the period that triggers a by-election, okay? So there's 2 periods, one that triggers a by-election, and that takes care of it. But if it's during a period that doesn't trigger a by-election, council has the authority to increase the salary of the person acting as the deputy mayor at that time. And that is just simply because we set our own remuneration, which I can say a number of times, remuneration, remuneration, remuneration. Okay, so we control it. So we're the ones that decide that. So if that event occurs outside of the by-election period, that's how I believe we can do it. Would you agree with me, Mr. Faust?
Who's been sitting so quietly this whole meeting?
But he's on it.
I would.
All right.
And
Councillor
if
Carlson,
I
does that
can-
answer your question?
Well, it just reiterates what I already knew, that yes, council can do it. My instinct was that having a policy around it, saying that whatever council decides or the policy says, if somebody is in place of the mayor for an extended period, the mayor's salary reverts to that person. Makes it easier than council then waiting a couple weeks during a council meeting and then asking, well, what do you think we should do? And it all depends on, well, do they like Councillor Carlson at that time? No, let's cut his salary in half. If they love Councillor Carlson, oh, let's double it. I think having good policy to guide is all I'm saying. I know we can do whatever, but a good policy helps people know what should be done or what will be done.
So now we have a different response from Mr. Sarsfield. Hopefully similar.
I believe it's a correct response. So I thought I'd try that anyway. So it does actually outline what the process is. It says if for city council, if the mayor goes missing or absent or whatever he does for a period of time exceeding 12 months, then we hold a by-election. If that occurs within that 12 months, then council chooses among themselves who the mayor will be. So they make a vote on it. So it's not necessarily the deputy mayor at the time. It could be any one of the remaining 8. And once that person is appointed mayor, then the salary would be adjusted accordingly for that particular position. So I don't believe you need a policy. It's covered in the Act.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Mr.
And I think I
Sarsfield.
should
That's-
also clarify, we have no intention of losing the mayor and
No.
this is all again a theoretical conversation. And so Blaine, there is no concern or worry. All right, Councillor Middleton Hope.
Madam Chair, I am completely in a fog here because I don't see this as the purpose of referring this back to this committee. The discussion was to have administration look into transition planning, transition allowance. Had nothing to do with the mayor and whether the mayor doesn't make it through his term. This was about transition allowance from the time when council members leave office. That's what this is about, and this is the research that Mr. Matthews has conducted. So I don't know why we're wandering off in the woods talking about pension plans and everything else. Mr. Calder, the pension would be, after 4 years of paying into a pension, would be so infinitesimal, it wouldn't be worth my time to pick the money up off the counter. So it's not about pensions, it's about a transition allowance for council members after putting in public service to assist them to move back into the private sector. Some members of council, bit of a soapbox here, but some members of council have given up a substantial amount of their business time to invest in public service. The purpose of this, as I understand it, and please, Councillor Carlson, correct me if I'm wrong, is to assist with that transition. This isn't about pensions, and this isn't about what we do if the mayor decides not to come back from Mexico. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
So I'd ask
much nicer.
I'd ask my colleague if I am accurately reflecting what his original intent of this motion was, and then perhaps ask Mr. Matthews if he can comment on it.
And thank you, Councillor Middleton Hope. You're 100% right. It started down the path, just a discussion with myself and the mayor. Just as he was leaving town, I told him, please drive carefully. Because if you get into a California hospital, it's Mayor Carlson for the next couple weeks, and nobody wanted that. So it started as I'd like to know exactly what the process is, and Mr. Sarsfield gave me that answer. The second part was then following out around transition allowances for council. As we've seen in the report, many communities in Alberta do it, many more across the country do it, because you are correct. Not for all of us, but I do know that several of my colleagues, when they got elected to council, had to either give up or drop back or terminate their outside employment because of the workload. And I think you're right. I think we're compensated very fairly for the work we do. However, when your time of service comes to an end, you are cut loose. There are no pensions. There are no employment insurance benefits to cover you. So if you need to get back into the workforce, you're sort of high and dry for as ever long as that takes. Other councils have recognized this, and as we see in the reports, have compensated members for their public service. So you're right. That was the second part of the resolution.
So the questions have gone far-ranging. You do want to know from Mr. Matthews if the information he found on transition information was provided and et cetera. Mr. Matthews, do you have any clarification on that?
Yes, thank you, Councillor Crowson, and over to Councillor Milton Hope. So we did conduct research based on the OBM components, and we did find 5 different other municipalities in kind of that mid-sized range or larger range that do provide this in Alberta. We also provided as information for members of this committee also 3 municipalities that currently don't have any of that. I think it's 3 inside there. I'm just remembering from the brief. We've also provided inside of there some of the information around the costing based on the typical model that we've seen. So all this information is provided in context if this committee would like to take it any further or do any other information.
Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you very much, Mr. Matthews. There's been a fair amount of work that's gone into this, and I appreciate that. We now have a much more fulsome understanding for what transitional allowance or compensation might look like across the province of Alberta.
So at this point, we do have a motion that this is to receive for information. Of course, process-wise, if anybody wants to bring a motion arising today, they have that option, or people can take this away and do a future motion if they want. But right now, I will go to Councillor Dodick. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee receive the report as information. Councillor Dodick. Oh, just a second. I have Councillor Carlson back in the queue.
Sorry.
I'm going to interrupt Councillor Carlson.
Thank you. It just for the committee's consideration, I guess, I wouldn't mind if administration could, the information they provided on what other municipalities do, and they've sort of put forth a straw man of what it would look like if we followed suit here in Lethbridge. I'm wondering if for the next meeting or at some future point, a draft policy could be created based on the sort of the direction that was provided in the report about going with what the average community does, and to have that presented to see what it would look like. I'm wondering if the committee would consider doing that.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. I am going to look to see if there is consensus. Right now, the motion on the floor is simply to accept his information. Now, we can accept it for information, so we can finish Councillor Dodick's motion, because regardless, you have the information. And then we can look to see if anybody has a motion arising coming from Councillor Carlson's suggestion. I'm going to suggest that is how we move forward. Okay, so we will continue then with the motion from Councillor Dodick on the floor to receive as information. And Councillor Dodick, the ball is in your court right now.
Okay, as indicated, this is a motion to receive as information. There is no action item here. This was in response to a request by Councillor Carlson for administration to look at it, and that's what the motion is, receive it as information. And I would ask, or call the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor on that motion? All right. But Councillor Middleton Hope, you are still in the queue. Do you have a motion arising, or do you have something else you'd like to bring forward?
Well, I do, and I appreciate Councillor Carlson pushing this back to governance SPC to have a look at. Okay, we've asked administration to have a look at it. They've provided us with a fulsome document. Now it dies. Why wouldn't we send this back up to council so that all council members can have the same information and deal with it? Well,
Now,
just simply because
for
we've received it for
does
information
not
doesn't go back
to
up.
council, or does? Just a process question, Mr. Westerson?
The motion that was just passed was that the committee received this as information. It's
Again,
done at committee.
Right. So it's done.
You've accepted as information.
Yep.
There can still be a motion arising.
Right.
Could there not, Mr. Westerson? If the motion arising is different enough?
If it's different enough, yes.
Well, our colleagues haven't had an opportunity to review this information. We asked administration to go through the motions of putting this together, which I appreciate. I think it's only fair that we send this back up to council and allow our colleagues to at least receive this information and then make a decision about how we're going to move forward.
So there are a couple of ways you can do it. Like I said, you can do a motion arising.
Correct.
Or you can take the information and bring it as an OBM directly to council. Now, motion directly to council, would get to council. A motion arising may or may not pass at this level.
This is Councillor Carlson's original motion. I don't want to butt into it, but I'm just simply trying to help him facilitate it. So
I know he cannot bring a motion arising here because
Right.
he's not on the committee. He could bring an OBM to council based on the information provided by administration.
Okay, well, let's hear from Jen and see what she's got to say.
Okay, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
So being that Councillor Carlson cannot bring a motion forward because he's not on this committee, I would like to have a motion arising for administration to draft a policy or amendment to policy based on the administrative information that we've received today.
Okay, so now we have that motion on the floor.
And
So-
Mr. Westerson will need a moment to draft.
We'll need some time to draft, but since it's a
Mr.
motion
Brierley?
on the floor, it also means that we can look to administration for support, ask any questions on it, et cetera. And Mr. Brierley, I think you are gung-ho to say something. You have that look.
I am. Looked like Councillor Middleton Hope wants to say something first.
Yeah, so Councillor Schmidt-Rempel just did what I said I was going to do.
Yes.
So
So you can do the motion together. You can both have your name on it.
fair enough, but that's effectively what we want, is we want this motion to come back to. But she's added some additional components to it.
Okay?
So maybe we can have a look and see what that motion might look like and whether it satisfies. I know Councillor Carlson would like to have some input into what this might look like. My concern here is to get it back to council with this information so that council is better informed.
Okay, so Mr. Westerson is busy drafting something. While he's doing that, the motion may be changed or not based on what Mr. Brierley has to say. So why don't we hear from Mr. Brierley? Then we can take a bit of a recess and you can all look at the drafted motion, the motion being drafted. Does that make sense, process?
Yes.
Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you okay with that? Oh, yeah. Okay, Mr. Brierley, the floor is yours then.
Thank you, Madam Chair. An option for consideration. So to come back with a draft policy by October is probably a little bit too tight, so I would ask for by the end of the year, given the November workload related to budget. Another option that we could, the council could consider for October is for us to develop a bit of a straw man with respect to here's what this might look like in terms of the model and the costs associated. Bring that back for your consideration, and should council elect to proceed, then proceed with the policy that would support that to bring it back so you had something more fulsome to consider together. We could come back with that in
Governance at that
October.
level?
And that's council's decision if you would like that to come back to governance or come back to economic, because it's largely financial and all members of committee would be there.
Okay. So from a process perspective, let's just go through. Councillor Carlson, is this heading the direction you'd like to see? Because you can't have an opinion, you just can't vote.
Thank you. I always have an opinion. I do appreciate that because administration sort of brought back a straw man model, but it's in bits and pieces based on other communities' policies and the possible budgetary effects on our community if we proceeded in the same manner they do. I would just like to see it put all together into a policy with the so it's not in bits and pieces. It's sort of laid out saying this is how a transition allowance could work.
Okay.
It gives gives our colleagues more something more solid to look at.
Okay, I've been reminded by Mr. Westerson that because this would be a recommendation, it would have to go to council on September 17th before it moves ahead. So just remember that everything would be, no final decision could be made till it goes to council anyways about any recommendation we make.
Correct, but we could direct the administration to come back to this committee, or sorry, you could direct.
That is another option. So yeah. Councillor Middleton Hope, I think you're all as clear as mud right now.
Let's bring it back to this committee. Let's send it over to economic. Let's get it back to council so we can make a decision on it.
Who's moving this again?
Me. I think they want to do it jointly if they can agree on it. Recess for 5 minutes, everyone, just so that we... right, thank you again. We're back in action, whatever we are. We have Councillor Carlson in the queue.
While we had a break, I was just going to say that it did catch me off guard, and I think Councillor Middleton Hope sort of elucidated it, is that the referral motion clearly stated that it was to refer to governance to draft a policy. So that's why I was a bit taken aback that it was just to receive as information. And so that was my only concern, so I'm glad Councillor Middleton Hope and Councillor Schmidt-Rempel are drafting something. I'd love to hear it.
Okay, so this is the motion arising that I have been given. It's moved by Councillor Schmidt-Rempel. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommends City Council direct administration prepare a draft policy regarding a transition allowance for members of City Council based on the information provided to be considered by the end of Q4 2024. So that is the motion arising. That is on the floor at this point. And Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, you can speak to it, and then we can see if there's any questions or debate on it.
Yep, thank you very much. And since Councillor Carlson can't be on this, or is not on this committee, he could be on this committee if he wanted to be. Since Councillor Carlson is not on this committee, I will bring this motion forward that follows up with the council June 25th council meeting motion that he made. I will follow this up for this to be forwarded to the next council meeting, and we can go from there about policy might look like, or should this be pulled off the consent agenda.
Okay, sorry, I'm playing with mics because I'm doing
That's
stuff.
okay.
All right, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel has finished. Councillor Middleton Hope, you are in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really do appreciate Councillor Carlson bringing this forward. Talk about stirring the pot. However, yes, well, walking away from the cauldron but stirring the pot. I won't support this motion, and I'll tell you why. The component in prepare a draft policy regarding a transition allowance. This is asking our administration to conduct additional work. I want this to go back to council. If it fails, it will go back to council for review, and at that time, Councillor Carlson, you'll have an opportunity to remove it from the consent agenda and have more fulsome discussion. I don't want administration to continue to conduct work in this regard unless we have clear direction from the rest of council. So I won't be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Dodick?
Yes, I won't be supporting this resolution either. The information that was provided to this committee is available to all members of council. We were told often that all members of council can attend at SPCs, and that all members of council have access to SPC materials. Thus, I would say that all members of council, having had the opportunity to look at this, can decide at the next council meeting if they want to bring an official business motion that actually directly to create a policy that includes the information contained in the materials before us. That's fine and dandy, but I'm not prepared to do anything beyond what I already voted on, which was for information purposes only, so I will not be supporting this.
Councillor Carlson, you can't vote, but you can debate, and I see you're in the queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My only concern around this is that council already did this. The resolution that council passed unanimously at the meeting was that this be referred to governance to guide the creation of a succession planning policy that includes a transition allowance. So council already said, do this. And this says, the motion in front of us says, go back and say, council, tell us to do this. The council already did say that was the referral motion. That's what confused me and caught me off guard. If you read the motion, the referral motion, it was to get all these materials collected and create a draft policy to be considered by council. So I think there may have been a misunderstanding in administration of what the referral motion actually said. Because it was fairly clear that it directed administration to provide governance with the tools to create a draft policy for council consideration.
We're just checking one thing, just a moment.
Unless I'm completely wrong, but I wrote it, so I think I'm right.
The sense I'm getting is that my colleagues are not wanting staff to do any policy at this time without further direction. Is that an accurate understanding of how the committee's feeling?
Even though council directed that this be done?
And that's one of the things we have to get some clear, some information on. Can we override a recommendation? I'm just waiting to hear from Mr. Westerson and Mr. Sarsfield on that. So am I understanding we have the flexibility to not create a policy?
Well, that's our interpretation.
Okay, so yeah, Councillor Carlson, the interpretation of several people in the room is that it was a suggestion, but we don't have to create a policy. One, because the succession planning is already covered by the MGA, and the transition planning is separate, but I'll let Mr. Westerson speak to it.
What I'm hearing the committee would like to do is make sure that this information goes to council on the September 17th City Council meeting. Barring the motion that was already voted upon with regards to receiving this as information, SBC could reconsider that vote and then go back and vote to recommend council receive this as information on September 17th. I think that would accomplish what each member here has been discussing, and go from there.
We need a 2/3 vote for consideration?
Yep.
Well, I know. I just want to make sure the process. Okay.
So what I'm hearing now is then we'll have a motion to reconsider our vote to receive as information.
Okay. Now, it was a unanimous vote, so does it matter who makes the vote, the motion to reconsider? Okay, so Councillor Dodick, do you want to make a motion to reconsider your earlier motion and give back the information? No, you're just going to take that motion back right now, reconsideration,
It's going to be the motion that follows it.
just to send that information to council.
Okay, not to create anything, not to do, okay.
Okay.
I would make a motion for reconsideration.
All right, so we have a motion to reconsider the earlier motion. All in favor? Okay. So now we have a motion arising to forward the information received to council at the next meeting of council. Okay, I'll make that motion just to get everything on the book. All those in favor? That passes unanimously. If there is another motion to reconsider, I will close the things right now anyways. All right, I do have one more motion. Advocacy 101 being brought forward by Councillor Middleton Hope. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee receive the Advocacy 101 framework as information, and further be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee direct that the closed meeting discussions with respect to the Advocacy 101 framework remain confidential pursuant to sections 21, harmful to intergovernmental relations, and 24, advice from officials of the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act. Councillor Middleton Hope. Just say question.
I'm going to call a question.
Question's been called. All in favor? We are adjourned. Go home, people.
Thank you.
Thank you.